Stand up for what you believe in. Understand the power of your voice. Through your voice and with the help of the web and social media, you can truly make a difference in the world.
Because when you come from another country, you have this mindset of fighting and getting things done because you know that it's a privilege to even get here.
Yeah. So, throughout history, there has been defining moments that has done either one of two things, either divide or unite people. And I think that things are not what they are, rather what we make out of them. It's all about perspective. And I think the subject that we're going to be touching today has the potential to give us all the more understanding, the compassion, the empathy, and the unity to make our planet evolve. And, I think we have the responsibility to do what is right. And the rest of the world will follow because the United States is the trendsetter of the world. And us being part of it, I think it's important for us to put our best foot forward. So today I'm joined by Lorena Malavet. Lorena is a DACA recipient, an activist, a doer. She is one of the most driven people that I know. And one thing that I love about her is that she genuinely sees possibility everywhere. And, our friendship has grown exponentially in the last 8 months that I've known you, because it's been only 8 months. But I think that in that short period of time, I've connected with you in so many aspects. So, and I think the one thing that I could connect with you in the most is your drive to set yourself free and others too, right? Because I have that same drive, to have freedom and for others as well, to help others obtain their freedom as well. Freedom, unlike the word states, has come to us at a very high cost. Our parents have had to work very hard for it, and us now, we continue to work hard to obtain our freedom. If you're listening to this podcast, you can relate to this feeling at some extent. So just think about any time you had to earn your freedom. Maybe it was when you were in high school that you needed to earn your parents' trust to kind of go out and have the freedom that you wanted, or in college to have the freedom to choose the career that you wanted to do for the next 4 to 5 years, or right now at the point that we are, which is to make our own decisions in our professional lives and in our personal lives. So I think that's so important. And I want to dig now a little deeper into your backstory, Lorena, and just tell me why this value is so important to you, this value of freedom, and what it is that you're doing now for the tens of thousands of DACA recipients in Florida, to move forward, knowing their status and in the situation that they are now.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. I truly agree with a lot of the things you said. Just things how, freedom, as the word itself, has a lot of history behind it. And one thing that I do truly believe is it has some pros and cons. It's not something that's given to you, unfortunately, right? Because everybody wants to be everything, to have that given to them. But it also makes you the person you are. It makes you the fighter that you are because you're fighting for something. It's not like you're just standing on this ground and you're living your life and you're not doing anything that takes you out of your comfort zone, that actually makes and leaves a mark, right? Nothing's given to you. So just how we as DACA recipients don't have the freedom yet is a reason to fight, right? It gives us that push to fight for something, but then it also gives us the personality and the strength to be conquering, to want to do something for us and for the people that we're trying to help. So I think that it's a pro because it makes you stronger, right? It makes you stronger as a person. Mm-hmm. It makes you a fighter. It makes you have goals and want to reach something. But it also is a con because you're definitely going through a struggle and definitely going through things that you shouldn't be going through. And that people don't go through.
At such a young age.
Right. And, we talk about this, and, DACA recipients, the state that we're in, as DACA recipients, we're in limbo. We don't know what's happening. It's, for me at least, I always look at it there's just so much more going on in the world too, that it's like, this is, if you put things into perspective, like, this is nothing. Do you know? Like, like, we're still living on this planet. We're still living in the US.
Yes.
We're still somehow have the opportunity to even work. So, like, that is exactly why I'm like, okay, this is a reason to fight, but it's not a reason to just stop fighting once you get it. And not just stop fighting for DACA or immigrants or undocumented, you know, immigrants, but it's more like, just not stop fighting for anything, because there's always something.
Always.
So it's like, you know, you have your papers now, but what happens to the people that are fully undocumented, can't get a job, can't get anything? And that is exactly why you just always have to fight and fight for something, and it really builds you up.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so another thing is in regards to my story. So my story is, you know, very similar to every person that, you know, every family that comes and migrates to the US.
Yeah.
And it's technically, you know, the family members, parents, trying to find a better future for their children. So I am from Cali, Colombia, and my parents decided to bring my sister and I to the United States when I was 7 years old. So I went to Houston, Texas. That was our first city in the US that we moved into. And it was just a whole new world. It was just a whole new world. And my parents were aware that it was going to be hard and that it was going to be a big change. But they wanted to do this because they saw that there was a future. They thought and they believed that there really was a future for their daughters to grow. And that's all parents want children.
All parents.
That's the only thing parents want for their children.
Yes.
So the only thing parents want for the children is to put them in the place that they can see them grow and know that they will be who they would want to be. So that is why it's like that's why I say that it's very similar to other people, because it's a human being thing. Yeah. You want to be in a place where you know you have a future, where your family has a future. Nobody chooses to be in a place where they don't see any growth, right? So that's like, it's like our mentality as human beings. So a lot of the times it's like how our bodies react to when you're like in what's the word I'm looking for?
Fight or flight state?
Right. So when your body's like looking for, it's like in survival mode.
Yeah, survival mode.
So you're automatically in that. That's like your body just working on its own. Same thing. It's like you have children. You're living in this country that you don't see a future. What can we do? Let's move somewhere else where we know we can all grow. Or where our children can grow and who cares about us. Unfortunately, a lot of parents think that way. And that's when you know, like, their love for their children is just a lot higher than for themselves. Yeah. So living in Houston for 2 years was really difficult, actually. I remember, you know, as a 7-year-old, I have really good memory when I was really little. Yeah. So I have, like, certain moments that I may not want to remember, but they help me. Yeah. They help me be stronger. So one of those things was when I didn't know the language. So, of course, in South America, they teach you, like, the basics. Yeah. You know, hello, hi, apple, so orange. Basic. So basic, right? Because they never think you would actually go to the country.
Leave the country, yeah.
So it's like, here, let me give you the basic. So let me get to Houston, Texas in, I believe it was 2006, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe around 2006. So, of course, it's this whole place, right? I don't know where I'm at. I know I'm with my family, but, like, you're just confused as to, like, who are you surrounded by? And it's Houston, Texas. It's not, like, straight to Miami, right? So you're in this place where it's very, very, unfortunately, racist, right? Very discriminating. And people were just, you were just too racist, technically. And people could consider this a race because, unfortunately, some people just didn't want to understand what this really meant. So if you spoke Spanish, you were Mexican. Yes. And apparently Mexican was a race. Yep. Or you were American. Either way, yeah. So, And the craziest part is that, for example, in my school, I remember there was literally one black man, like one black little boy.
What?
Like it was just taken over.
Yeah.
It was just full on white American. And then there was like one Chinese person, and that's it. There was like no diversity. No diversity. So, and then I'm there like the tan girl that is Mexican. Like that's literally it. And of course, these are also kids that learn these things from their parents. It's not like, how old were we? 7. They have to get this from somebody. This is it goes back to their family. So I just remember being in Houston and me trying to like learn the language. So I remember like everybody hated me. Like everybody looked at me like I was an alien sitting in the classroom. Because I also went in the middle of the year. So classes had started, everybody had their friends, and people just didn't like me. So then I remember also seeing I was friends with one girl that was actually Mexican. Mm-hmm. And she spoke perfect English. Like I think she was born here, her family was Mexican. And I was really close to her, but like there was always this tension with everybody around me. And nobody wanted to talk to me either because I also didn't know how to communicate with people. I couldn't yet. So it was very tough, but I definitely learned and picked up the language so quickly. I was 7 years old. You just literally get you just understand, like your body and your brain is so quickly to mold.
Yes.
That's what happened. I learned the language. I actually took an exam that they were helping me with. It was like one of those exams that you take in like a class, FCAT wannabe. Mm-hmm. And I learned, and I actually passed with a higher score than people that were in the class, learning the concepts, knew English. So the teacher was like in shock. She loved me. The teacher loved me, and people hated me. And then I moved to Miami, Florida, because my dad saw more opportunity for his job or something that he could do in Miami, where in Houston he didn't see that possibility. And he also realized, like, there's a lot of migration going on to Miami, and a lot of Hispanics and a lot of people that can create this whole community that maybe you don't go missing your country so much. So we didn't have that diversity in Houston, right? I mean, we experienced so many like racist situations. My parents went through a lot of things in Houston, and it's also very dangerous. Like, we chose to stay, and like, that's it. There's no going back. Like, that you can't go back to your country. So you're just automatically, like, your mind becomes like, okay, how do I stay away from danger?
Yeah.
Or dangerous situations, or situations that can put me at risk and then like lose it all.
And my children too.
And my children, right? Like losing my family. And then how do I like do these things that my children won't have to suffer? So that's it. Like, and in Houston, Texas was not that place. The reason why it's so dangerous is because it has people know that a lot of immigrants go there. A lot of Mexicans go there, right? So it's a lot of undocumented people, and it's not safe to be in an area that's basically targeted all the time. Yeah. So that was something that, I mean, as a parent, I guess they made the right choice. So we went to Miami, Florida, and I've lived there for 15 years. I entered 4th grade there, and I was also that random girl that people did not like, and I was, until this day, I'm confused as to why people have this like perspective on somebody that comes in. Yeah. And there was nothing welcoming about me coming in. It was like, kick this girl out of here.
Even in Miami?
Even in Miami. And I realized, like, no one in my class spoke Spanish.
Really?
Nobody. No.
Like,
don't get me wrong. They were all Hispanics.
Yeah. But
there was not a single American in that classroom.
Right.
But they were all English. There was nothing in Spanish. And one thing in Houston, I remember coming home from school crying because of how like crazy the kids were to me, and it's not like they were bullying, but you just felt like so much tension. And I was crying because I didn't understand anything at all. But in Miami, I felt a little better. I knew people understood me, and I kicked ass again. But the real point is that what that was is like me trying to connect and really go in the culture.
Fit in, yeah.
Right, fit in. Like go in, learn the language, take the exams, meet the people. It's like you're instilling this whole American lifestyle in your head, and you're 8 years old.
The funny thing about fitting in for me is that I think that as you're young, you try to fit in so much so that when you get older, you can learn how to stand out. It's so funny.
It's
and
like how ironic.
But you learn how to stand out because you know what it's like to fit in. So you learn to embrace what it's like to be different and what makes you unique, and then you go on from there. And I think that that's something, like for instance, the welcoming part, that just says so much about how you are now, because you're so welcoming. Like that, and it just happens to be that when you were young, you were discriminated and people were not welcoming at all, and that just made you be like the opposite of that because you understood what it was like to be like that.
Totally. And I actually had never noticed that. And those are like little details that like connect your past with like your personality. Literally, I had never really noticed that. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It was like, you know, I experienced this whole non-welcoming classroom where kids were like discriminating. So that is why you're right. Like now I'm like trying. I try to be as welcoming as possible, and it goes back to just like shaping your personality, whatever you experience, and going back to me living in Miami. I realized like, you know, after taking these exams, after doing good, I'm like, I'm gonna kick ass, and you know, I'm gonna be like everybody else here, right? Because I think that that's like what the mentality is. You have to be like everybody else. And it goes back to what you said. You try to fit in, and then later on, you need to take yourself out of that scenario. So I grew up in Miami, and I went, you know, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So during this whole time period, like I'm undocumented. Like
not knowing though.
And not knowing, right? So at first, I just always knew there was something different, right? Like, I had these close best friends, and, like, I would stay over their house all the time, and I would see how they would live, and I would see, like, what they would have, and I would see, like, how their lifestyle was, and I'm like, how is that? Like, I don't have this kind of lifestyle. And, you know, they're also from a different country. So they also came here for very similar reasons. I'm like, why is it that I live this other life when we have the same concept that, you know, our parents came here for the same reasons, we live in the same area? I never understood. So then I did notice that, you know, my mom would work extra hard. You know, she would find anything to do where she could like get some money to pay, you know, for us, which was amazing. Like, we never had anything missing. Mm-hmm. There was always food. There was always a shelter. Everything was always there. But it was not as easy to obtain, right? And I mean, I would never say that it was easy for other families to obtain it or for anybody to obtain it. You always have to work for it. But I just experienced differently. Yeah. And I was, you know, 9 years old experiencing this, going through it kind of, you know, with my mom, seeing the struggle. But still not knowing much of the undocumented life. So, yeah, it was like that for many years until, you know, 8th grade, where my parents sat me down and they were like, okay, this is what's happening. They gave me a little overview, but then in 9th grade, they really kind of said, like, where are we going with this? Because there's not much future, right? Like, there's not much future for them. There's not much future for their daughters unless we figure out a plan.
Right.
And then, fortunately, you know, in 10th grade is when the whole DACA movement started. Like, the whole movement to get something at least for these young kids that were brought here, right? Yeah. So...
And I just want to give, like, that quick little story, like, of how DACA actually happened, because I thought that was pretty cool. And there's a lot of people that don't know about this. And it's just the simplest, like, idea, but that makes so much impact.
So, I know it. And I'm still, like, crazy, in shock, like, to know that, like, the person that I know is the one that helped really spark that. So it was basically this organization called Students Working for Equal Rights. They used to meet in Miami-Dade, and it was a group of students that were actually undocumented, and they were paying out-of-state tuition in Miami-Dade. They were trying their best to to really push through with school. But, you know, it was like so hard. Like they had to pay like an out-of-state student for a community college where you are like paying nothing if you have some proof that you're a resident or a US citizen. So, or you're barely not even paying, right? If you have this proof. But they didn't have any of this proof. They didn't even have a license. There was nothing to, some of them couldn't even go to the school because of those situations. Mm-hmm. So this girl and this group of students would meet, and they would just meet, you know, to talk about this, and it was like their escape. Yeah. And a lot of them were, like I said, it was their escape. It was their way of like being with the same people being in the room with people that are in their same situation, which I have experienced, and it's so liberating to just, it's like such a relief to be in a room where everybody understands your situation. Yeah. Although everybody has had it differently. I've been in a room where it's like people have had their families deported, their moms, they're living on their own, they're 15 years old. Things that I'm like, wow, you know, it goes back to there's always a worse situation. But it is so liberating. So that's what they would use these meetings for. They would be in a room, talk about what's happening, updates on anything, and then they started creating, like, they wanted to do something, right? So they started strategizing until they decided to walk to Washington, D.C. From Miami, Florida to Washington, D.C. It took them months. To get there. And they were walking, so they had to stop in little cities and little towns. And every town or city that they would stop in, they would get people to join them. And I think that that's so valuable, because you don't know anybody in these cities, in these towns, and you think that they're probably against you. Right. But there's certain people that are like, they just don't know. So you have to try to educate. And that's what they did. They would go and they would talk to people and share their stories and what they wanted. You know, they wanted to go to school, and they wanted to live a regular life and contribute. Like, that's literally what most of the people want. They want to contribute because they see the opportunity here. And that is beneficial for everybody, for more and more contributions from a group of people that have the right mindset. Yeah. Because you when you come from another country, you have this mindset of fighting and getting things done, because you know that it's a privilege to even get here.
You have to earn it.
Exactly. You're earning this. It's not like you get here and you expect things. You don't expect anything. You expect from yourself, and you expect to work. Like, that's the only expectation you have. Work and kick ass on things that help me and my family and whatnot. So that's the mentality. So I actually believe that we need to be here. Like, this is like the mindset people need to just make the country better and to make the world better. You know, you have so many doctors, so many scientists and people that are coming with different mindsets from other countries. They make it better. They come with different ideas. Right. That's what shapes the U.S. And whoever tries to take that away is not being logical, because you can't take away diversity, which is what the U.S. was built on. So every stop they would bring people until they got to D.C. And then, you know, this was a whole media thing. The media was involved. And then Obama said, you know, this was during the Obama time period. And he said, like, you know, he wanted to meet with these people. But nobody could meet with him because nobody had an ID to go into the White House.
That is insane.
So,
that
like,
is just crazy.
Right. Like, how is it that the president wants to meet with these undocumented immigrants and none of them can meet him because they don't have a license because they are undocumented? So it was just very ironic. Because this is the country he's running. Right. So it's like, hey, like, you're trying to meet with the people, but the reality is they can't. Yeah. They can't come in the White House. Guess what else they can't do? Yeah. They can't work. They can't do this. They can't earn money. They can't pay their taxes. Or they can pay their taxes, because a lot of undocumented people pay their taxes. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Nothing makes sense, right? So yeah, it's a great story, because out of this meeting with this one girl, that was the only one that was able to go in to meet him because she actually had an ID. She, you know, went in there and, you know, she was mad. She wasn't in there to be like, hi, Mr. President. Like, I'm here to represent. No, she was mad, and she was there with like a fighting attitude, and she just went in and expected him to understand, but there was a lot of tension. And out of this meeting came DACA, out of this meeting of urgency, out of this meeting of, hey, we just walked from Miami, Florida to Washington, D.C. because this is done. Like, this is the only thing we have that we can do to actually bring awareness to the topic, and understand that there are people living in this country that don't have anything.
Right.
And they want to have something, and they want to help and contribute and make it better. And are making it better even without anything. So imagine with something.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what the meeting was for. Like, why they walked, and they were just done. They were done. It was like the only thing that they could do. Like, they were frustrated. It wasn't even like, it was young kids. It was college kids that were trying to prepare for the future.
Right.
And have a better future. So that was a backstory on how DACA started.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and from that, like a year later, 2 years later, Obama came out with his executive order where he finally said, okay, since nobody wants to back me up, let me do this on my own. Took out DACA. And that was life-changing for more than 800,000 DACA recipients, that are now in limbo as well.
And I want you to talk about what are the requirements to receive DACA, right? Because a lot of people think that just anybody could be a DACA recipient, but that's not true.
Right. And it goes back to like how some people are just like, why don't you just get legal? That question just like gives me like, it makes me twitch.
Right.
Because people don't understand like the process, right? Of course, if you're born here, you don't understand the process. And you probably won't even look into understanding because it doesn't affect you. Like a lot of things that don't affect you, you don't know about.
Right.
But then there's just like certain things that you're like, why don't you just get your residency? And you're like, do you know what happens? Like, do you know the real story, right? So that's the same thing that happens with the DACA. Like, how did you get DACA? Like, yeah, like, doesn't that help you? Like, doesn't that save you from whatever? Or why do you have DACA if this? Or you're a rapist. You can't have DACA.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are all things that you're just like, what?
So what's the breakdown of DACA?
You literally have to have a clean criminal record, right? So you can't have like any felonies on your record. And this is something you have to do every 2 years, right? So DACA is every 2 years. So you only have a license for 2 years. You only have a work permit for 2 years. You basically are on a timeline.
Yeah.
And in those 2 years, things can't happen. You can't ruin your record because then you can't renew. Right. So you had to have been here before your 16th birthday.
Right.
So you technically like living here for like half your life.
So you're talking about young people being DACA recipients,
yes.
Right? So that gives a perspective into what kind of people are also
right.
like DACA recipients, which means people who want to go to college, who want to get a job, people who are like driven.
Right. And that's exactly why they are DACA recipients.
Exactly.
Because they are like in this scenario where, and of course I would never say that everybody's perfect. Every DACA recipient is perfect, or nobody's perfect. People live different lives, but the average DACA recipient is hardworking, right. Just like many of the undocumented immigrants in this country. Hardworking and just want a better life and are driven, like you said, just want to be better and contribute in some type of way. Right? Like some people have these ideas of like creating companies. Some people want to like just make create more jobs and like open like private businesses, and just like all these ideas that maybe people that are from here don't have.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So going back to in 10th grade,
right,
I was able to get my DACA, and it was a privilege. I still didn't know what it really meant, but I realized I had a license, and I realized I was able to get my license, a credit card, and my work permit. And that was like all you need to survive in this moment, right? Yeah. Like you were surviving before without any of this. Like now this is like, wow, crazy. Right. And it's also like getting to that stage where like you're about to get a job soon. Like how would that have worked? I don't know. Right? So all of those things were actually like such a privilege to so many people. And I wasn't part of the fight at all, right? I was in 10th grade. these other kids were in college, right? So I was about 16, 15 years old. I wasn't involved at all. So one of the, I remember so many things. Obviously, I'm still in that same, it's still a process, right? So you're still going through these things that you're like, why is this happening to me? And how do I even like cope with it? But one of the things I went through was, for example, in 9th grade, when you turn 15, right? You're like, oh my God, I finally turned 15. I can go and get my restricted, right? So that license that you can't technically drive without an adult. So I was like, wow. And all my friends went to go get that. All of them, it was like a trend. And all of a sudden I'm like, wait, I can't go get mine, I can't go get my license. Like I can't get it restricted. And it's that feeling that you're like an outcast, right? You're like, how is this even, like, why? You just don't know the answers. You don't really have them. So all my friends also are asking why.
Yeah, like what's going on? Like, why aren't you having your license?
Right. So imagine like you questioning yourself and then people questioning you. You just like, what am I supposed to answer people? So you just kind of start putting up a front and building up this lie. And that's what I had to do, right? So that's what I did. I would just always say, oh, I'm not going to get it yet, whatever, I'll wait. I don't have a car anyway, or whatever. You just make up a lie. Which at first is always easy, but then it just kind of just catches up to you. And I don't like that. Nobody likes that.
No.
So I'm sure this a lot of people can relate, you just had to build up this whole front. And I did the same with my credit card, right? So like my debit card, I was never able to get a debit card because you need to show an ID. And I didn't have one. So I'm there, without a debit card, no license. And it's just like, you're just that one girl that doesn't have any of that. Or at least you think you're that one. You think you're that one girl, right?
Because at that point, nobody would talk about this,
Nobody.
right?
It was literally like a taboo. Like, it was like, you don't talk about your immigration status. Like, right. And now your parents also tell you, like, don't talk about this. Or you just know. Like, nobody knew about anything of me.
Yeah.
And it was like, don't talk about it. Like,
and it being such a huge part of you, right?
Right? It's like you're living in two lives. I was literally living a
Hannah Montana.
I was Hannah Montana. Documented girl in the day, undocumented at night. Literally. It was like, and then those scenarios where you're like, oh, that wasn't me. Literally, it's like, wow, you just had this whole new life. And that's how people were living, and that's how some people still live.
Right.
So it's unbelievable, and you're so young. You're like, how is this? Why am I going through this? But I could definitely say Hannah Montana in an undocumented version, undocumented Hannah Montana life. But yeah, it was like you would just lie, and then things like not being able to go back to Colombia for any reason. My grandparents died, and you can't go back to Colombia to see your grandparents, to be there in the funeral, right? Because it's one thing to not be there when they're dying, but at least in their funeral, like, you can't attend because you don't have the right immigration status to leave the country.
Yeah.
To be in your parents' funeral, to be in your grandparents' funeral, to be in, just in a specific situation that nobody wants to be in. And unfortunately, you're in it, and you can't even mourn correctly.
Yeah.
It's like your feelings are just like taken apart. Like, it's like if you're like a robot. Like, I'm sorry, that sucks.
Yeah.
Basically. So yeah, like, having to FaceTime during my grandparents' funeral, like, seeing how devastating it was to like our family. It was just so hard, and also not knowing why. Like, still not understanding, like, why is it not easy to make it happen? Like, why do some people have it and then other people don't?
Yeah, you feel like you're not worthy, or you feel like it's kind of like a curse, right?
Yeah, you're like questioning, like, why is it happening to me? What did we do wrong?
Right.
How do people have that? Because I was living in this area where it was so many people, migrating, and so many people coming from South America. I'm like, how do other Colombians have this?
Right.
How do other people that are from Cali have this? Like, what do I have that's different? And that really messes with your, like, self-esteem too, right?
That just goes to show that everybody has their own world and their own situations to handle. Because For you, it was yeah, for me and for you, because I can relate a lot. It was like the whole DACA and the whole undocumented situation. For other people, it might be like just like poverty.
Right. And you wouldn't know. Or
and you wouldn't know.
Family missing and, no father, no mother, no either,
Yeah.
And you would never know. Because a lot of the times people live in like this double life.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you can't talk about it. You feel being judged.
You agree?
And you're afraid of being judged or like people thinking like you're different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is why now I am more involved in the situation. And some of the things I experienced also was, for example, in senior year, right? My friends were, in junior year, they were starting to apply to colleges. That whole like American lifestyle where culture where you're like college time, application time, scholarship time, like fun, like yes, it's like a whole experience. That experience is not for everybody, right? Like not everybody gets to experience that the right way.
Right.
For me, it was a time to stress out like never before, time to cry and feel like you're not worthy and you feel like you're not, like all your hard work in high school it just went to shambles. Like literally I remember like pushing so hard in like 10th, 11th, 12th, because in 9th grade I was like very laid back, and then in 10th, 11th, and 12th I was kicking ass. Like my GPA, I raised it so much. I was doing extracurricular activities, like I was doing SGA, like student government, like I was trying to get involved, like everything I could, because I said, you know what, I have something different in my life. That means I need to work extra hard for the things that I want, and I need to literally push and not let these little things push me down, because I know that my status and whatever I have wrong can't be pulling me down.
No.
So how would I make it work? By going extra high.
Right. You needed to earn it.
I needed to work extra hard to earn it, right? Because everybody was trying to earn it. Everybody worked to earn it. But for me, it was like there was no other way. It was like there was no giving up. There was no option.
Yeah.
And it was like a challenge. But challenge accepted, right? So like that's why I raised my GPA. I did all these clubs. I was like in everything, or tried to be, and then like network and connect with the teachers and like really have personal connection with like my teachers. So that helped me. But then in senior year, it was like, why did I just do that? 3 years, where did those 3 years go? Because now this is the moment where I'm like, how am I going to school? How am I going to pay for college? Where am I going? And all my friends are like, I'm going to UF, I'm going to FSU, I'm going out of state, I'm going to like the best schools, and I got this scholarship. I have bright futures, which applies to everybody.
Something that you also saw when you were young, like people like their parents already opening a trust fund.
Right. Having like my friends like, oh yeah, my parents have Florida prepaid. And I'm like, wow.
What is that?
What is that? First, right. I had no idea what that was. And then they're like, yeah, my parents were paying for my college like a long time ago. I'm like, wow. That is so beneficial. Yes. Because you literally are now in the stage where you're like, oh, I don't have to worry about paying for my college.
And your parents either.
Right. And you're like, how did I not know about this? How did I not get to do that? And that's what happened. And then scholarships, like all these scholarships that you could and you qualify for, you're extremely taken out. I mean, you're immediately taken out if you're not a U.S. citizen.
Yes.
Or a U.S. resident. And you're like, well, that sucks. 3.5 GPA and trying to study communications scholarship. Sorry, not a U.S. citizen, out. Like, it's unbelievable. So there was really no option, right? And there was a lot of options. And me meeting my advisor not knowing my status, right? Because I didn't want to share.
Yeah.
But also, like, not knowing how to deal with people in my situation.
Yeah.
I feel like that was something that lacked back then, and it still lacks now, right? People don't talk about this like, oh, are you documented? Yeah. Or, oh, do you have the right, or the necessary documents to get that scholarship.
Right.
Let me help you if you don't. Let me try to find a way if you don't.
Right.
It was more like, oh, okay, look, this is the ones that you apply for. And and they make you go to all these seminars.
Right.
Oh my God, I remember going to all these high school seminars of getting into college, applying for the right scholarship,
making your essay perfect.
writing your essay, meeting your whatever, and you're like, I'm not gonna go.
I'm not even gonna go.
Right? You're like, I'm not even going to college at this point in my life. So those are the things that you're like, they had no resources, or they didn't even have the open mind to understand that there were people that were not in the same. They were, not everybody was in the same level, at least immigration status. So it became like a thing where I would go to my advisor and I'll be like, oh, thank you so much for your help. Like, I'm going to apply for all these scholarships. Yes. And I would go home and be like, can't do any of this. So until I realized I had to do my own research and understand what was happening with immigration itself. And that's when I realized, okay, like, how does undocumented people, how do they go to school?
Right.
How do DACA recipients, right? This was like 2 years after DACA was established. So I saw that Florida in-state tuition passed, right? The law that actually allowed students to get a waiver. Right. So DACA recipients or TPS recipients to get a waiver to not pay the high prices of out of state.
Right.
So they would cover the rest. You would pay in state, and then all of that would be paid by the funds, provided funds. So that was a blessing. I was like, whoa, like, that is amazing. So I did that with Miami-Dade. I said, I'm going to go to Miami-Dade because they also had another scholarship that was for everybody. Mm-hmm. So after this in-state tuition happened, it was like I connected the scholarship that Miami-Dade offered and the in-state tuition, and that created not paying for school.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So it was like, how did that happen? I don't know. A lot of research and like going back and forth to the school, but at the same time, like, they would not help. They were like, oh yeah, you have to do that on your own.
Oh,
like,
because they didn't understand your situation.
Right. And like, nobody wants to talk about this. No. Like, when you're gonna go and sign up for a school, like, hi, I don't have a license, or hi, I don't have proof of residency.
Yeah.
I don't have proof that I'm gonna live here for 4 years because I have a DACA, and that means I have 2 years to live here technically. Things like that. Yeah. So you don't want to talk about that, and then you're like, okay, who's gonna help me then?
Yeah.
Because it's that fear of talking about it. So, and that fear is still happening right now. People don't really want to talk about it, and it's understandable, right? You don't want to talk about it, understandable, but then you realize like it really catches up to you.
Yeah.
Hiding that and putting it to the side, not being like straight up about it. And of course, in different scenarios, you're not gonna go tell a police officer all your life story, and obviously with the people, right? Like, you don't want to,
but even then you're risking,
right? You're risking it. You always feel like it's a risk. So the real point is that I experienced that, and that was so hard, knowing that you're just like, your only option is Miami-Dade. That's it.
Right.
And then I went to Miami-Dade and got my associate's degree, and I realized, like, how do I go to university now? What is the scholarship now? It was so, like, confusing. I'm like, I can't afford it. That's it. I can't afford everything. Right. It's so high. Like, I can do it. My parents are not going to do it. I'm not going to make them do this.
Right.
So that is when I had to do my own research again, because MDC advisor, I loved her, but she didn't understand, like, my situation. Like, you don't have somebody that's in that. They're all U.S. citizens. Yeah. They're all, like, they don't know what that even feels like, right?
So they're not going to be knowledgeable about anything like that.
So that's what I had to do. I had to research, and then I found out the scholarship was helping DACA recipients. Right. And that, like, changed my whole life. Like, I was like, wow. And I applied, and I got it, and I was, like, crying of happiness. It was, like, that day was beautiful. And then I was able to go to FIU and Florida International University, and that was amazing. Knowing that because, in MDC, I pushed so hard. I was like, if I am going to get my associate's degree, I'm not paying for school, and I am undocumented, technically, I need to work my ass.
Yeah.
There's no, like, slacking.
Right.
So I got, like, I went crazy, and I was like, boom, 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 working hard. And it was good. I got a 4.0 GPA in the 2 years, and it was like, yes, like, that's going to help me somehow to go to FIU.
Yeah.
And it did, because I applied for the scholarship and I got it. And that was amazing. So now I am trying to help. And some of the things that, like, I want to focus on is educate, like, advisors or the students in high school or in college that don't understand or don't know where they're going next. Don't have the resources to really feel like the things that are given are beneficial, right? Like, they don't want to be hearing about these scholarships that they cannot apply for. They want to hear about the scholarships they can apply for, and the opportunities they have with their status. So that's what I want to help. And because I went through that, and having to do it on my own was really hard, because at least for me, I wasn't giving up, but some people easily give up.
Right.
And it's understandable. They feel like there's no way out. So I don't want that to happen. I don't want anyone to be giving up because they don't see the opportunity.
Right.
But it's there.
It's there, yeah.
It's just very hidden.
Agreed.
It's like yesterday. It actually reminds me of yesterday when I went to eat that ramen, and I was looking at the menu, and it was all pork. Everything was pork. And you literally are like, oh, that's it. That's all there is, pork.
Because you're vegetarian.
Because I'm vegetarian.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I probably should leave right now. Like, I was literally debating. I'm like, okay, I should get up and just whatever. There's no option for me.
Right.
Or maybe I could ask this guy, and he will probably have to ask somebody else because he doesn't know. And then, or I just come up with my solution and ask if there's that solution there. And that's literally what I did. I'm like, what is the option you have for vegetarians?
Right.
And then he was like, oh, I could do this and this and that, and then we only add this and this and that, and that's vegetarian. I'm like, there we go. Thank you. Bring me that. Mm-hmm. It was not on the menu. It was not given to me. I couldn't read it. I had to put the thoughts together.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's so crazy because I'm literally just talking about this because the girl next to me, wow, this is so crazy. The girl next to me with her mom, they sat next to me and they were looking at the menu, and it's all pork. And not only is it all pork, but it's all pork and it has pork broth. If you don't eat pork, you don't want the broth either.
Right.
So you're like, what do I eat? And they didn't know either. They were like, oh, pork. Like, what? Confused. And then they see me, and they see mine has no pork. Mine has just noodles, vegetables. And they're like, they asked the server, like, I want what she has. And they asked me, what do you... I'm like, yeah, mine is a vegetarian. It's not on the menu. I'm like, wow, like, that just literally connects the reality of, like, you need to ask, or you need to create your own. And that will get people to do it and ask how you're doing it. And that's how literally things is. It's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
Literally, it was a domino effect. The mom got the vegetarian. The daughter got the vegetarian. And now they know the place offers vegetarian even if it's not on the menu.
Yeah.
That's literally how it is. The scholarships will all say U.S. citizen. You will not see one that doesn't, or one that doesn't say U.S. resident. Mm-hmm. But then there's, like, those two that are for DACA recipients that are not on the website.
They're, like, hidden.
They're not even on the website.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah.
They're on your own Googling, and somehow they're tied to the school. That's how it felt.
Right.
And, like, speaking of, that just happened to me yesterday. Mm-hmm. And that just goes to show, like, you just always have to ask and then not easily give up, because that's what I could have done.
Because people will shut you out. Why? Right. Because they're not knowledgeable. They don't have the situation. They haven't handled it. So obviously they need to do their jobs. They're not gonna waste a whole day on you, like, trying to figure your situation out. Mm-hmm. You have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. No, and they could easily just say, I'm sorry, like, that's just not something I know.
Yeah.
That's it. And you easily can say, okay, I'm gonna give up now. I'm gonna go and just work and not go to school and just and work, but not even work like to want to work. Just get money.
Right.
And or not have a drive because you just got shut down for something you wanted to do. And I remember going to so many, like, scholarship talks in Miami-Dade and in FIU. And I remember, like, having, like, the panels of, like, the advisors, with like the people that are connected with the president, and then the scholarship advisor. And I actually asked, this was when I already had gotten the scholarship, but I could have applied for more, right? And I thought I could. Oh, and there's something else that happened to me. I was so sad. But okay, so in this time, I was like, oh, I raised my hand as one of the questions, right? So they're asking, they're like, oh, who has a question about scholarships, blah, blah. And I ask, I'm like, so what? So I have the Dream.us scholarship. I didn't even have to explain what it was because she's a scholarship advisor. At least she has a connection to what that scholarship was. Or I was hoping, right? Who would know? Who knows? But then she was like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, but that means I can't, does that mean I have other options in scholarships? She's like, I'm sorry, like none of the other options that are listed would apply to you. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you.
Nice.
So what happens to the rest of the DACA recipients that are in FIU? Like, what do they have as their options?
Right.
When FIU is Florida International University, like there's like hundreds of DACA recipients.
Right.
So
what are you fighting for now? Like, what is it that you do in your activist work? Because there's a lot that's been going on in the past year that you being very active in like in organizations and things like that, like the Students Work for Equal Rights. Tell me more about that.
I want to help create some type of change where it could be like, no matter if you have it and your struggles, like they're the ones that help, that's what helps you be different.
Right.
And like, if you don't have the struggle, you don't know what it feels like. I don't worry about little things like I used to because I've gone through bigger things.
So then,
that I'm like, what is that? Like, how am I gonna stress about that? I've lived here my whole life and I haven't even had a license. I'm gonna worry about like little things. Like, no. So those are just things that have made me who I am, and I want to help people understand that like they are powerful, right? Like people are powerful. Like your voice is so powerful because you create some type of change, right? Like you are like a messenger. So like, how do you just stay quiet and live a life without trying to like create a message, create momentum, like possibly push people to like do things that they believe in? It doesn't even have to be like, hey, do what I want, do what I believe in. It's, hey, do what you believe in, but remember that you can do that.
Right.
Like, remember that what you want to do is possible with the right determination and just doing it. Like, just being able to do it and consistently doing it. And like understanding like, damn, like really understanding, hey, I have the potential to do this. Let me do it.
Right.
Let me show people that with our voice, we can make this happen. And with our actions, this can happen. And that's just how things have always happened. Like, that's how things have gotten done. Like, LGBTQ community, like, you can get married in the whole United States. Why? Because people that were in the situation or people that were not in the situation but were like they were allies, they were support systems, they fought for that. Like, it wasn't like the president said, oh, you know what, today I feel like I should just let all the LGBTQ community, like, they can all get married. It was not a thought that came to the president's mind. It was people,
the masses,
fighting, literally fighting. Like, that's my right. I can marry whoever I want. And I'm going to fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. And years of fighting. And then little, like, states. First, like, cities, states, like, things like that. And then, boom, the United States. And it's a law. Yeah. Not even an executive order. No, it's a law. And that started with a few people trying to make it happen. All these things have been done because people decide to make a change, right? So that's what I'm huge on. Making a change, people, helping people understand that they can make a change, right? So you can do the change and be the change that you want to see, right? That quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Candy.
Right. You can literally be that change and you can create that change, but you have to understand that you're able to. You have the potential to do it and determine yourself to do it. So that's what I'm on right now. I'm trying to help DACA recipients and help just like the undocumented immigrant community and just the immigrant community itself and try to see how and where we can work together to just make something happen and
Right.
help people. You know, there's 12 million undocumented immigrants in the
Right.
US. Of course, you won't have one solution for everybody all at once.
Right.
So how do we do it little by little? Starting with DACA and TPS,
Yes.
right? TPS, unfortunately, was thrown out, and it's so sad to see that happening.
And they want to do the same thing with DACA.
Right.
And that
so
can't
it's
happen.
right. So it's like, how do you go little by little so that can be like a stepping of the ladder to
Right.
make it happen for everybody. So that's what I'm trying to do now, and I want to help. There's a lot of young kids that are like now coming out of the shadows,
Right.
and like saying like, yes, I'm undocumented and unafraid. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that you're like proud of doing now, and it was never like that before.
Never.
So now it's like a proud thing because you realize like that makes me strong and that makes me a fighter, and other people don't have that in them, and that's how I feel. I feel like, hell yeah, I'm undocumented, unafraid, and I will fight because I have that in my character.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have it, that's because you don't know what it feels like to be undocumented and have that lifestyle. You know?
But I think to some extent, like how we're saying, you get me talking about perspective. Our situation might be different,
Right.
But we might not understand other
people's story,
situation,
right? 'Cause-
right?
Exactly. Think about it like, if I'm saying this whole, it goes back to why we all need to work together.
Yeah.
Because no matter who you
Unified.
are, you have something happening in your
Yeah.
life. If I'm telling you, let's say I'm telling somebody that's gay, that is afraid of coming out and is afraid of being themselves, and is afraid of what people are going to think, or doesn't know that they can use like their stepping out mindset to help other people step
Yeah,
out and be
yeah.
free and not care what people think. So if I tell them I'm a DACA recipient, I'm undocumented, I'm unafraid, I forget what people are gonna say, it's like, damn, like they could be US citizens, they could
Right.
be like born here, whole family American, but they're going through something, and that is they're gay and they're
Right.
afraid of coming out. Or they're like, wow, like, you know what? Like, how do I get from what she's telling me? How do I connect that to my life?
Right.
So there's just a
Yeah,
connection
yeah,
there.
Of course.
You're like, hey, like you're going through this other topic, but it's still a topic that you're struggling with.
Yeah.
Like there's always that struggle that you need to like be humble with as human beings. Like there's always gonna be that one thing.
Right.
If it's that, or if it's like poverty, right? Like if you're poor and you're like, hey, like help me stay in this country, and you're poor and but you may be a US citizen, like what's your struggle? Like you're trying to get money.
Yeah.
So how do you work together? Or if you're black, right? If you're
Right.
African American and you're in that struggle, and you've always been, right? Unfortunately, you know, there's still so much oppression and that terrible like mentality people still have against black people.
Yeah.
So that is how the black community and the undocumented community connect.
Yeah.
Because there's always a connection with a struggle.
Yeah.
So that is why this is something that needs to be understood by everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter who you are, no matter what your race is, no matter what your ethnicity is, you have a relation because you've gone through something, or you know somebody that's
Right.
gone through something. But I want to connect with different communities, help people, and make things happen. I want to get, you know, permanent solution for DACA recipients, but I also want like Florida, that's where I live, like to be a state where they give licenses to anybody, not just having an immigration document.
Right.
And that is kind of where we're at now, that with the organization Students Working for Equal Rights.
Well, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing your story. You know what I loved about the most? I liked what you said about, like, there's a lot of young kids coming out saying they're undocumented. And I think that's how you feel now. And that's a kind of a reason why I was so inspired by you. Because right from the beginning, like, you had this drive to, like, not be afraid of what anybody thought, depending on your situation. And that took a long time for me to feel good about myself about. And even then, even like once I met you, and even now, I'm still kind of like in that afraid zone. Like, it's not like open for me to talk about. But I think the best way for me to help is to kind of do this, right? Like, help you share your story, help me and everybody else share their story, so that there could be young people, undocumented, unafraid, you know, to embrace this instead of like thinking, like, transcend from it being a curse to embrace it as your gift.
Yeah,
and
100%.
That is something that I learned once I was like, right now, late 20s, like early 20s. But that's something that I recently learned, to embrace what it is your struggle to be your gift.
Yeah. And that's like literally the beauty of it.
Yeah.
You have the option to.
Exactly.
And it goes back to how, you know, what you said at the beginning. Like, you have the power to make it an opportunity, right?
Yes,
like, you have the power of making it what you want.
Yeah.
You can sit two people down, two people in the same struggle, and you see how they use it for their benefit, or they let that break them.
Tear them apart.
So that's just like life itself.
What we said in the beginning, there's two things that happen in history: either divide or unite people. And we're choosing to unite people with our stories. And I think that's amazing. I think that what you're doing for Florida and every single immigrant in the country is just giving people hope. Not only hope, you're also doing like tangible things, where you talked about having some law that would allow people to have licenses without such documentation. That's something that is needed for people that don't have it.
I definitely just wanted to say that, like, obviously, you know, young kids are the ones that are like, you know, young kids are the future, right?
Yeah.
So it's just amazing how, you know, just everything going towards young people and kind of being that mentor that can help a young person and feel safe and feel comfortable that, you know, whoever you are, like, you can be that mentor for somebody. Yeah. No matter if you think that you're 15 and you're too young to be a mentor, like, no. You're 15 and you doing something positive can help a 9-year-old. Or you being 21 can help a 15-year-old.
And we need to speak up. And this is our way of speaking up and basically saying we're here, we're good, we're too young. Right. Very hardworking girls, women who are just going at life and being strong about it and trying to make the best out of our situation. And I just think that says a lot about how you can transcend from it being such a struggle when you were young and everything, and just like seeing the beauty out of it and making it amazing.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so for every dreamer, every person out there, I think that this conversation is not only for DACA recipients, it's for anybody who's ever left their home country and has felt what it's like to start over and to dream of a new future, of a better future for you, for your family, and are currently working on it, because life is never ending, right? And change is the only thing that is constant in life. And I think that's beautiful. And that's what this podcast is about embracing change. And this is part of our change. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey guys, I want to thank you so much for sticking with us till the end of this long podcast. We are so excited, and it was a fun and a very important conversation with Lorena about humanizing undocumentation. We are going to be dropping her Instagram handle down in the comments so you can check out more of her content, because I can tell you she's doing great things for all immigrants around the country, and we want you to see that. Also, go out and vote on November 6th. We are huge on change on this podcast. So in order to start change, we got to start it ourselves. We are so excited to have more stories like Lorena's on this podcast. So tune into the next episode, because I'm sure you're going to like it. Like we always say, we are not finished. So subscribe.